Hello and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, the Modi government in its third term is ready to present its first full budget. It did have a budget when it came in July, but that was probably a half interim budget of sorts. But now a first full-fledged budget will be presented by Modi 3.0. What will the budget entail and what are the needs of the hour? There is a lot of talk about the middle class being disgruntled. Arvind Kejriwal has made a political issue of it. Don't forget, Delhi elections are just 5 days after the budget is presented. Will that be taken into account? What about the stock market and other such issues? Joining me on the show today, I have with me Aditi Phadnis. She's a political columnist, political editor, Business Standard, and an author. MK Venu, founding editor of the Wire.in, and Dilip Cherian. He is columnist, commentator, and a brand guru. Venu, what are the need? What are you expecting from the budget? What are the expectations? I know with this government, nothing goes according to expectations, but still, let's give it a shot.
So, Priya, I personally, now this is my view, which is that the budget is budget exercise now is largely becoming a non-event. I'll tell you why. Because a single budget cannot address some of the serious structural problems that the economy faces, and these structural problems have continued for over the last 6-7 years, and these structural problems are acknowledged by everybody, including this is not just the critics or the economists who are critical of this government. It is the structural problem is considered. It talked about even in Mumbai by serious analysts, even by big multinational company CEOs, Indian companies, big company CEOs, and the structural problem is as follows. For the last 6-7 years, consumer demand has been tepid in India. And as a result of which, when there is no demand, or when there is suboptimal demand, new investments don't come. So everybody in Bombay acknowledges that private investment in India has not really picked up in any meaningful way during Modi's last 10 years. Now, there are several reasons for it, which we know historically, demonetization, badly designed years. So Indian economy kept getting shocks, and COVID was also a kind of shock. So, but post-COVID, what surprises people is after COVID, people thought that the economy was on an upswing, and everybody was talking about a 7% plus growth after 2022 as a given in the last. But another shocker came, and in normal circumstances, again the GDP growth, the latest number showed 5.4%. There's a decline. I mean, there's a deceleration, a serious deceleration, and along with this deceleration, we have the CEO of Nestle. We have the CEOs of Hindustan Lever, FMCG companies, Asian Paints. We have the CEO of CMD, Chairman, Managing Director of Bajaj Motors, Rajiv Bajaj. All of them saying that there is in fact, Nestle chief said the middle class is shrinking. There is a serious problem with consumption. Consumption demand is tepid. It is in decline. Urban consumption is in decline last few quarters, acknowledged by everybody. Now, this follows the larger studies, macroeconomic studies, government's own studies, showing that the bottom 70% population have not seen their income grow. Top 10-15% doing very well. SUVs are doing very well, but the entry level Maruti car is in negative growth, showing negative growth. So now there is a big polarization, which some people have called a K-shaped growth. Now, unless the bottom 80% of the population, 85% population do not consume. Now, this is the middle class problem, right? So the middle class is not consuming. It's the middle class which drives the economy.
Okay. So let me just.
So in a nutshell, I'll just tell you, Modi's economic policy of the last 10 years, which is my one sentence analysis. He has given bottom 50% people free food and a lot of direct transfer. Top say big businesses have got big tax breaks. They're doing well. They have profitability, but the middle class has got badly hurt. Middle class incomes have stagnated. Wages are stagnating. Rural wages are stagnating, but you ask even in media or any other sector, old economy sector particularly, wages are stagnating. An engineer's entry level salary was 45,000 rupees 15 years ago. Even today, it's 45,000. Now, this is a reality. So these are structural issues. And there's a latest analysis by UBS Banks of Switzerland, investment bank, very well known. They are, for the first time, they have flagged this issue that the problems are structural. And I don't think one budget can solve this issue.
Wow, I outlined all the problems, but Aditi, the middle class is something now that is, finally, politicians are also talking about it. Early on we were the ignored class, but there seems to be a huge gap between as Venu said, the lower classes income group is getting looked after, the rich are getting looked after. What about the people? And it's 80% in the middle, Aditi.
Well, I think the state governments are have their role to play in this.
Hmm.
Um, and the fact that many state governments have introduced, I mean, how much, so many things are being given free to the lower middle class and the in low income groups. You get free food, you get free
Yes.
houses, you get free toilets, you get basically you really don't have to work very much, particularly if you are a woman in a if you have two daughters in a lower middle class household where your father is working, in Maharashtra for instance, you will get straight away 6,000 rupees without lifting a finger. 6,000 rupees is still quite a lot of money for a certain class. So the fact is that the thinking behind this, particularly by state governments, is that uh, you if you keep getting stuff free, there is only so much food you can consume. There are only so many houses you can live in. Better to give cash in the hands of people so that that spurs consumption, and then people set up their own small. If there's a woman who is has a tea shop, she will add biscuits to that to her product mix to make it work better for her. So this Ladli Behna scheme, Ladki Behan scheme, etc., etc. We've seen all of
Yes.
that. Maya scheme in Jharkhand. That is, I think, aimed at spurring consumption and creating demand for so that consumption is spurred. So that's one part of it. I think we might see something in the budget that will act as an as a push to that impulse.
Hmm.
Also, this budget would have been perfect because there are only two elections, Delhi and Bihar, later in the year. So you could have done tough stuff without really affecting your electoral prospects. Um, Whether it's in disinvestment or it's other areas which potentially could have the possibility of hurting your political constituency. So we have to see if they will do that because this is the year. After this, next year there will be major elections in Tamil Nadu, in Assam, and other places. So if you don't do it this year, that opportunity is lost.
Fair enough. So two things. One, Dilip is also, all these era of freebies is here to stay. We can all complain against it, but it is here. But it is spurring rural consumption. The urban consumption, as even Venu pointed out, needs, the FMCG big people are saying that there is a lack of urban consumption. So will the budget address that? And do you think that the budget will do something remarkable or reforms, or is it just, with this government, it's an announcement driven government rather than a budget driven government?
At the risk of being wrong in a few days' time, I think
Hmm.
this budget has, as will all budgets in the last few years have, a lot of elements which are to do with immediacy. Immediacy is the Delhi elections, and
Yes.
immediacy is the arrival of Trump and the need for cutting duties on imports from America. I recognize that those duties which are excise related are no longer involved here, but I think that there will be a lot of customs duties and other such things where you will see, not just tweaking, but I suspect significant changes in the way taxation affects the import of goods from America. If you don't do that, Trump is not going to wait. The electorate in India may have to wait, and you may have all kinds of things. But I've been hearing that there are noises about what they need to do to make sure that we don't fall into any retaliatory tariff situation. The number of goods may be small, the number of companies affected may be small, but there is a sense of anxiety, and that you saw in the way the stock market behaved over the last few days. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that the kind of demand that Venu sees having vanished is significant and important, especially for the listed companies. The kind of demand that Aditi sees being triggered, uh, the woman who's got a tea shop who's going to add biscuits is certainly not going to look at Nestle as a supplier of biscuits. So, the two things could happen, and you might see continued, just for the sake of making sure that it is not seen as a political thing, continued support to the poorer sections and the lower middle class, and continued squeezing out of opportunities and income from the middle class. What am I expecting as far as the upper classes are concerned? Business as usual.
No breaks, okay. But Venu, if you were the government, won't you be worried with the way the stock market is reacting? There's such a thumbs down that has been coming for the past few months. Won't they want to address that? Won't they want to announce some kind of breaks?
Actually, Priya, the Indian stock market has done well over the last 2 years. In fact, post-COVID, I'll give you a comparison. Post-COVID, the Indian stock market, NSE, if you take, say, the COVID low, that is April of 2020, as a bottom, the NSE was 8,000 at that time. And to give you a comparison, China was also around 8,000, the Chinese index. Now, in the last 3 years, 4 years, the Indian index has really gone up, 3 times, and it's still upward of 20,000, the NSE. But the Chinese stock market continues to be at 8,000. It has not moved at all. And China has some great companies. So there is a global kind of assessment by the big investors that China is far too cheaper today than India. India is an expensive market. Now, this is one reason I'm giving you. To China, you get stocks in China at P ratios of 8 to 8, single-digit P ratio, which is considered very attractive. So a lot of FIIs have been sort of moving towards China, and high net worth investors are moving towards China. That is one reason. Second reason being that the Indian stock market, at least in the last, say, 2-3 weeks, is a bit spooked by the latest GDP numbers. So the point I was making about the UBS analysis or assessment that it seems there was a wide expectation. Indian stock market is doing very well, but suddenly the investors, the foreign investors, and even domestic investors, by the way, are now they're just sitting back and trying to assess whether this structural problem, where is this of consumer demand, etc., where is this leading our economy. There was a serious expectation that post-COVID recovery would sustain in 7% plus 7.5%, which RBI had also forecast at one time, would be par for the course. But it doesn't seem to be so. Suddenly the economy is again, becoming weak, 5.4% GDP. So I think the markets are a bit spooked by that also. So net, Priya, I'll give you a perspective. I have not seen I've been writing about the economy since the late 80s, especially after 1991. I have not seen a block of 10 years where the economy hasn't grown for at least 4-5 years in a sustained 7% plus, has not delivered a 7.5% growth rate. And for various reasons, as I cited earlier. But suddenly when people thought that we are now consistently post-COVID, everything is in place, all the structural, as per finance ministry's claims, all the fundamentals are in place, good reserves, India has good foreign exchange reserves, everything is doing well, and suddenly, growth goes down. This is actually worrying the finance
I
ministry
lost you.
also. Yeah. So there is somewhere, we are losing the way, and the numbers show it. And the investors also worried about it. The second reason being that Trump has created a fear around the world, and he's offering 15% corporate tax. He's promised to cut corporate tax in America. He's promising higher tariffs. He's promising lower regulations. He's promising a good deal for the global investors. So there's a herd mentality which even many investors are talking about, where everybody is now moving capital back to America. So incrementally, America is the flavor of the month or the flavor of the year. So that is also affecting the Indian markets.
Okay.
So it's a kind of several factors are coming together. Some domestic factor, our own weaknesses, and some coming from abroad, like the Trump's policies.
Okay.
All together are spooking the markets, and the rupee is also therefore it's really declining quite rapidly, and there are estimates that rupee could touch 89. These are Barclays and other firms, research firms are saying could touch 89 by another few months. And now we also see in newspapers that the RBI wants to deliberately, consciously depreciate the rupee in order to keep India competitive.
Okay,
so
I'm going
that is also there. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take a quick break, and Aditi, you can just react to the picture that Venu is painting. Is there any ray of hope anytime soon at all for us? But I'll just take a quick break. Hello and welcome back to the roundtable on the budget. We were discussing, what are the expectations, but the scenario as it is, Aditi, there is a lot that the finance minister has to deal with, even if it's just in terms of optics and not structurally, which really seems to be the need of the hour.
And I was asking an investment banker, friends of mine in Bombay, not just one, many, whether there was any possibility of a gender-based capex. Capital expenditure has been falling. We have seen that government is spending less. People are very confused about this. Usually, capital expenditure is not gender specific, it is gender neutral. But if you have capital expenditure which is meant for women, say in the form of women's hospitals or something that is women oriented, then that could spur another wave of support for the government from women, which we've seen, as I said earlier, in the women oriented schemes, but also create an impulse for expenditure by women or consumption by women. So I don't know. It requires a great leap of faith to do that. But if you look at the surveys that have been done by the National Health Family Health Survey, which is a very good survey, by the way, and it has extensive data on the way women have access to the internet and the mobiles and how they spend their money. It's very interesting to see how much control, much more than before, women have over finances. And I think that is a constituency that we need to, that the government maybe.
Can I say, Priya, just to add to what Aditi is saying, I read a news report which suggests a few days ago, Economic Times, I think, carried a news report saying that the government is a little worried about women's participation in labor force in India, and they want to do something to increase participation of women in labor force. And I'll tell you why. Because India is the only country around the world where some parts of India, like the Hindi heartland, UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, etc., women's participation in the labor force is is barely double digit. In Bihar, it's maybe 8%, UP 9%, which means 90% of the women are not in the labor force. So,
In the unorganized labor force.
no, they're not in the labor force officially in the way our employment is calculated.
Okay.
So a woman working in the fields would be part of the labor force officially, but these are women who are probably doing work at home. Now, even International Labour Organization has expressed surprise that in India, such a large population of women, especially in the Hindi, are outside the labor force. So there is this government wants to bring, in some way or the other, bring them into the labor force. Like Aditi said, if they maybe fund them to set up, shops or some, Seva type of, experiment where they participate in food processing, etc. Making papad.
Okay.
So there is a serious thinking because no economy in the world has modernized with such a large number of women outside the labor force.
Okay. Dilip, your take on the gender thing, and maybe unrelated or related, but I was looking at the Sea Voter survey, which says that in Delhi, at least, Kejriwal has more of the women vote than the BJP. So will they, try and, as you said, Delhi is their first immediate goal. Also, will they try and announce something, socks for women, not just freebies, but something to incentivize women to earn?
I think that as far as women are concerned, there is a crying need for it. In terms of capital expenditure, don't forget that all the state governments are doing enormous things in terms of free transportation, etc., which are also in the form of capital expenditure. So capital expenditure, as far as women are concerned, is also going into the transportation sector. More buses, more free rides, possibly free metros, etc. Hospital, I'm not sure about. But the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that while women's participation is important, the budget is also about taxation. For the first time, you have individual corporate taxation exceeding individual income tax exceeding the total of corporate taxation. That is worrying. The total revenue from income tax, if it indeed has gone up as much as it has, then there is reason for government to do some tinkering. Who will do the tinkering? Who will do the tinkering is also important. We've had, unfortunately, multiple changes of revenue secretaries in the last few months. So I think that indicates to some extent a level of instability in the team that is preparing the budget starting the end of September. So I feel that it is not about making the halwa. It's also about stability and ideation by a team that actually has a commitment to creating a budget which they stand for, they will defend, and they need to also then thereafter implement. So from my perspective of the budget, I'm seeing that even if the budget is actually, perhaps as many people say, written in places beyond the finance ministry, the fact that you have multiple changes in the top echelons of the bureaucracy there is also a matter of some concern to me. And we need to, as someone who watches the bureaucracy, I don't see this as a good sign.
Well put, Dilip.
Yeah.
But also, this it is worrying, the individual tax versus corporate tax figures. That's what we were talking about, the middle class, because the middle class is the one that's really suffering.
Yeah, there is there is some talk which I see on the business channels that the government this time is thinking about putting more money in the hands of the middle class. So now up to 15 lakh of annual income attracts 20% tax. So this may get increased to 20 lakhs so that the 20% beyond 15 lakh, it's 30%. So if the 20% slab is raised to 20 lakhs of income, which you'll put some extra 8, 9, 10,000 rupees a year into people's hands, which might spur some consumption demand. So it is hoped. So there is talk of tinkering with slabs, etc. In the new scheme, in the new tax,
Income tax.
income tax.
To be
there's
called
an
the
old
new popcorn scheme.
It's an old scheme and a new scheme. So that is because the middle class government acknowledges perhaps that no meaningful tax concession has come towards the middle class in the last 6-7 budgets. Whereas the companies, if you recall, corporate tax was reduced 25%, and for new projects it was 15%, which was like which at that time, 2019, it was thought that it was a revolutionary kind of big tax break for the corporates, and that corporates would respond by investing big time, which has not happened. So we've been hearing the chief economic advisor lamenting that we gave corporates such big tax break, and their profits have gone up, but they are not increasing employment, nor are they giving big wage hikes. So what are the corporates doing? Why aren't the corporates doing the heavy lifting? So this is a complaint that the chief economic advisor has been publicly been airing, right?
Okay.
So therefore, I think that this time the focus will be on the middle class. As you said, you began with the general sentiment that the middle class hasn't got anything meaningful in the last 6-7 years.
So let's hope with that, and I do hope they have acknowledged, as Venu's pointing out, or is it just us people acknowledging and no response from the other side? We'll wait and watch this space, but thank you so much for all the insights and inputs. Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.